stayed at a resort, which I normally don't do, but that's neither here nor there. But I thought this would be the perfect place and the perfect background to share with you guys some easy tips that I have for you to save money while you are traveling and going on vacation, going on holiday. So I'm going to be sharing with you guys some very easy tips, tricks, all that fun stuff what you need to make your holiday great and not spend so much money. So guys, generally speaking, whenever I travel, I like to divide it up into 4 different categories. That is transportation, that is your lodging, that is food, and any additional activities. Those are the 4 categories that you always want to think about. When you're traveling, think about the one thing that you are willing to spend the most amount of money on, and everything else goes flat, if that makes any sense. So for example, if you call yourself a big foodie, you love to eat, then there's no problem with spending the majority of your money going to really nice restaurants in whatever destination you're in. But that means that your lodging, that means that your transportation, that means that your activities have to be not as expensive as the food that you're going to spend. If you love to travel in style, there's nothing wrong with going first class all the way. But it may mean that you may not spend as much money on hotel accommodations, food, and activities. And that's okay, although I'm not a big transportation girl, but that's neither here nor there. But I always want you guys to think about the 4 different categories when it comes to where you're willing to spend your money at and plan accordingly. So that's number 1. Number 2, the first thing I do whenever I'm traveling, I figure out my transportation. Where am I going and for how long? That's really important. That's the first thing I do before I plan anything. Because generally I find that transportation can be the most expensive. Transportation and lodging can both be the most expensive depending on the time of year. So for me, one thing I like to do is I go to kayak.com, which is my favorite website to check on different flights, activities. Generally speaking, Wednesdays, Saturdays will be cheaper if you're going to be going and leaving somewhere. But if you can't do those dates because you're working, that's totally fine. But it's just great to get a gauge. I also like Skyscanner, and I also like Airfare Watchdog, and I'll have all that information for you guys in the description box. But that way you can just play with flights, and that will give you a better idea of where and how much you're going to be spending money. Y'all, transportation can be very, very expensive very fast. So I want you all, unless transportation is a big thing for you, don't spend too much money on that. I definitely don't. So I'll definitely link those for you guys. Well, it is true, you want to travel in low seasons, high seasons, then that does make a difference depending on how much money you'll be spending. So if you travel in the low season, that definitely means that you're going to be saving a lot more money. But it also may mean it's colder, there may be more rain, more weather that people, vacationers, don't like, and that's totally fine. We've been places, been to Costa Rica during the low season, we had no problem. So it really does just depend. But I do recommend traveling in low season if you're able to, because that will save you so much money on transportation and on lodging. Now, also, another point that I want to make when it comes to saving money with lodging particularly, there's nothing wrong with an Airbnb, but things like couch surfing, hostels are also fantastic ways to travel and to save money. You guys, I've been in hostels for the majority of my travels, and I've met lifelong friends there. So the accommodations are more dormitory style, but it's 100% worth it, especially if you're traveling for a longer amount of time. And that's another point I want to make, you guys. Time is really, really, really important. Ironically speaking, the shorter amount of time you're going to be at a place, the more expensive it'll be, right? The longer you stay somewhere, the cheaper your day-to-day costs will be. So if you have the time to travel for a longer amount of time, you'll actually be saving money per day in the long run. And one last tip I have for you guys is that when you all are budgeting, you're planning your trip, try to get a big overview about how much you plan on spending. Get an outline of what you plan on spending if you can. Get a general outline, and that way it'll give you a good idea of what you'll be spending per day. Also, work to make your flights very, very flexible if possible. And I'll talk about that in another video, more on planning the actual trip that you do. But when you make your flights flexible, like basic economy is great, Spirit can be great, but if you are traveling for an extended amount of time, there may be a place that you want to visit, and those flights can be very restrictive and have very high exchange fees. So you want something that's very flexible because your travel plans may change. So I do recommend investing just a little bit more money, and generally I find that those can be $20 or $30 more expensive. So it can definitely be worth the extra money for the flexibility, which I do definitely recommend, especially if you're traveling for a longer amount of time. So guys, generally speaking, accommodation, your lodging, your food and activities. What's most important, back everything else up. Go and kayak, go on airfare watchdog to look and gauge these prices. When you're traveling, get an idea of how much you plan on spending per day, and make sure that you're relatively flexible with your flight plans, especially if you're going to be traveling for an extended amount of time. That will definitely help. So guys, I hope these tips help. I want to say hello from Mexico, super exciting, and we will chit chat soon, y'all. Make sure you rate and